This case contains descriptions of real-life crimes involving a child victim. Names and locations have been changed to protect the privacy of the victim and their family. Out of respect for those affected, we have taken care to present the case with sensitivity and care. It was a gray November afternoon when 9-year-old Lara C was walking home from school with her friend. As usual, the two took the small path through the woods. It was familiar, quiet, and hardly anyone was around. They were still laughing when suddenly a male figure emerged from the undergrowth. Masked, motionless. Lara's friend ran, but Lara herself stood motionless. Hours passed, but Lara never arrived home. In the early evening, her parents called the emergency services, and a large-scale search began. But the young girl remained missing without a trace. Until 21 years later, when a worker in an old earth cellar discovered something so gruesome that it would shock an entire nation. November 14, 2002, was a Thursday. It was one of those typical late autumn days in Tennessee, when the sun hangs low between the trees at around 4 in the afternoon. Lara had had a normal day at school. Her mother later said that she had been in a good mood and had worn her favorite jacket, the one with the torn button on the sleeve. Lara was 9 years old. She wasn't a conspicuous child, but rather reserved. She loved animals, had a hamster named Peanut, and wanted to be a veterinarian when she grew up. Her teacher described her as attentive, a little dreamy, but polite. There were no arguments, no trouble, no indication that this day would be any different from any other. After school, Lara walked with her friend Emily along the same route they took almost every day. A shortcut through the woods, about 1 kilometer long, leads from the elementary school grounds directly to the neighborhood on the edge of the forest where both families live. A path of trampled leaves, trees and bushes on the left and right, and here and there an abandoned shed. The two girls walk side by side, talking about homework and Emmy's new Barbie dollhouse. It is around 4:50 p.m. when it happens. Emily later says that she smelled it first. Paint or solvent, something chemical. Then she noticed a movement to the right of the path. A man steps out of the bushes. He is wearing black clothes and a mask made of dark fabric. Not a word. Not a sound. Just this movement. The mask isn't like a Halloween mask, more like something improvised, cut from a sleeve. Emily screams. Then she runs, without looking back. She says she thought Lara was right behind her, but when she reaches the street, out of breath, she is alone. 2 minutes later, Emily is home. Her mother calls the police immediately. Less than an hour later, the first patrol car drives through the neighborhood. But there is no sign of Lara. A search party begins combing the woods that same evening. Flashlights, dogs, volunteers. Later, it will be said that it was the largest search operation in the region in 20 years. But it yields nothing. No scream was heard. No struggle. No items of clothing on the path. Only one find remains in the investigators' memories. About 100 meters from the path, under a blackberry bush, an officer finds Lara's scarf, light blue with small flowers, neatly folded, not carelessly dropped, almost as if someone had folded it. This one discovery is the first clue and, at the same time, the last tangible piece of evidence for a long time. As night falls, the forest is silent. Lara's parents sit in the kitchen of their home while officers search her bedroom. An open math notebook lies on the desk. Next to it is a half-eaten apple. There is no indication that Lara could have run away. Her backpack is neatly placed by the door. She didn't even take her favorite stuffed animal with her. The investigators talk to neighbors, teachers, family members. But no one has seen anything suspicious. No strange cars. No strange men. No arguments. No threatening letters. The next morning, Lara's face is on the front page of the local newspaper. The headline reads, 9-year-old girl disappears on her way home. Police investigate. The school is closed for 2 days. A picture of Lara hangs on the classroom wall. Emily says she thought every day that Lara would suddenly reappear, as if she would just walk in the door and ask why everyone looked so sad. But Lara remains missing. And that's just the beginning. The morning after Lara's disappearance, the C family home is full of people. Police officers, relatives, neighbors, reporters. The mother sits on the sofa with a notepad on her lap, but she doesn't write anything. The father stands outside the house smoking, even though he doesn't actually smoke. A police officer asks one standard question after another. When was the last time Lara ate something? Did she have an argument with anyone? Has she been acting differently lately? Is there anyone who has shown an interest in her? The mother shakes her head every time. The same answers over and over again. The police initially treat it as a missing person case. No evidence of a crime. No clue as to who might have done it. But the officers know that time is against them. The first 24 hours are crucial. After that, the chances drop rapidly. By early morning, dog teams are called in from the neighboring county. The dog's trail leads into the forest, continues for about 200 meters, then disappears. That's where the scent ends. It's as if someone took Lara out of the forest at that exact spot, perhaps into a vehicle. A neighbor reports seeing a light-colored car in the late afternoon, possibly a delivery van or a pickup truck. He's not sure. The police make a note of it. Later, this clue is almost lost among all the others. Posters are hung up at the school. Lara's teacher, a woman in her mid-40s with a soft voice, says in an interview that she can't believe anyone would want to hurt the girl. She was too quiet, too friendly, almost invisible. In the afternoon, an initial press conference is held. A police spokesman stands with his arms crossed in front of the county sheriff's office building. Behind him is a banner with the state's seal. He says they are doing everything possible, that there is no reason to panic, that the public can feel safe. In the background, Lara's father can be seen frowning. The police search the woods again. This time, with more personnel, metal detectors, and a team of volunteers. It is wet and cold, and the leaves muffle their footsteps. An elderly woman finds a button, light blue with a flower pattern. It is later identified as matching the one on Lara's jacket. But it tells us nothing about where she was, only that she must have been there. The mother is taken to the police station to hand over some clothes for the sniffer dogs. She is asked if there is anyone in the neighborhood who stood out. She doesn't mention any names, but she remembers a conversation Lara had a few days ago about a man sitting at the playground. He didn't talk to the children, but he didn't seem like a father either. The officers take her statement. The man is never found. In the evening, Lara's parents sit in the living room. They hardly say a word. A local TV camera is set up on the lawn. The lights are blinding. A reporter asks if they believe Lara is still alive. The mother doesn't answer. The father just says, "She has to be alive. Otherwise, I can't get up in the morning." Then the first day is over, and Lara remains missing. The first 72 hours after a child goes missing are considered crucial. Every investigator knows that, and even if no one says it out loud, everyone in town has an uneasy feeling. Lara is 9 years old. She wasn't riding her bike. She was on foot. And she wasn't a dreamer who would just run away. On the second day, the police expand the search. The entire forest around the school route is searched in a grid pattern. Firefighters, volunteers, sniffer dogs, even a mounted police unit. It's cold, windy, and it rains lightly on and off. But they keep going, step by step. The parents insist on going with them. In a side branch of the path, a searcher discovers something that is hardly noticeable at first. Lying among wet leaves is a small patch round, colorful, with a rainbow. The mother recognizes it immediately when she hears the description later. Lara had it on her school backpack. However, the backpack itself remains missing. On the third day, a boy from the neighborhood comes forward, 10 years old. He says he saw a man on the old forest road on the afternoon of the disappearance, about 100 meters from the path. The man was bent over, carrying something. On his way back, the boy saw a white delivery van with no logo but with dents on the side. The police checked the statement, but the boy cannot remember the license plate number. There are no camera recordings, no witnesses who can confirm the vehicle. The trail remains vague. In the meantime, the family's house is also searched. Not because they are suspected, but because in such cases every corner must be checked. There are no indications of domestic problems, no abuse, no motive for escape. The police confirm that everything points to foul play. The media now report daily, first regionally, then throughout the state. Newspapers print Lara's picture alongside a police phone number. Talk shows pick up the case. Reporters stand in front of the school, in front of the house, in the forest. But despite all the attention, one question remains unanswered. Where is Lara? Then, on the evening of the third day, a woman comes forward. She lives alone in a remote cabin on the edge of the forest. She says she heard screams on Thursday around 5 p.m. Not loud, but like a quiet cry. 2, maybe 3 times. She thought it was a game. It was only when she heard about the search that she became concerned. The officers take her statement seriously. Near her cabin is an old hunting lodge, long abandoned, windows boarded up. The police arrive with flashlights and tools. They break down the door. The floor is covered in dust. No traces. But in the corner lies a single child's sneaker, white with a pink trim, size 33. The mother recognizes it immediately. It's Lara's left shoe. Next to it, nothing. No blood, no other clues. But this discovery changes everything. It is the first clear evidence that Lara did not simply disappear. She was kidnapped. And something else strikes the investigators. The layer of dust on the floor is uneven, as if someone had been standing there, perhaps with their back to the door, perhaps listening, perhaps waiting. But whoever it was, they are long gone. Millersburg is not a place you normally talk about. A sleepy little town in the middle of Tennessee. Less than a 10-minute drive from the nearest highway, but it feels like a world of its own. Almost 3,000 inhabitants, 1 supermarket, 2 churches, 1 school. The forest begins right behind the residential streets, as if framing the town or swallowing it up when no one is looking. At first glance, the area is beautiful. Many people say so. Big trees, clear water, hardly any traffic. But if you stay longer, you sense something else. The silence here is too deep. The fog lingers too long between the trees. And people rarely talk about what happened. Not just about Lara. Because in 1979, 23 years before Lara disappeared, another child disappeared. A boy. His name was Matthew, 7 years old. No one ever found out what happened to him. He was on his way home from school to his grandparents' house, a route that also led through the forest. He too disappeared between 2 known points. A piece of clothing was also found, neatly folded. And there were no witnesses in his case either. The police later compared the cases. At the time, it was believed to be a coincidence. Today, it seems different. Far too similar. Far too quiet. In both cases, there was no suicide note, no unusual circumstances, and above all, no clues as to where the child could have been taken. Matthew's file was reopened after Lara's disappearance. An officer who was on duty at the time remembered a detail. Back then, a man who lived alone in a cabin in the woods had been questioned. His name was Clyde M., and he was a loner. No family, no job, just a rusty pickup truck and a dog. He was questioned several times, but never charged. No evidence. After Lara's disappearance, his name resurfaced. He was still living nearby, still alone, still with his dog. An officer visited him. Clyde said he hadn't seen or heard anything. He knew about the girl who was missing, but he had nothing to do with it. And then he said something that stuck. "I know this forest better than anyone else. If someone wants to hide something here, you won't find it." The police couldn't prove anything against him. No search warrant, no concrete suspicion. But Clyde was on their radar from then on. They watched him, again and again. But nothing happened. Millersburg had never been a place with much light. But now, it grew even darker. And people began to wonder if the forest was really just a forest, or a place that held something no one wanted to see. A week passes. Then, too, the search becomes smaller, quieter, more cautious. The camera crews leave. The volunteers return to their homes. Only the family remains in a state between hope and paralysis. The police continue to work, but the pace slows down. Instead of woods and paths, it's now about names, about connections, about people who had access to Lara. The first suspect is obvious. Clyde M., the loner from the woods. His name is at the top of the list. The investigators check him out again, this time more thoroughly. They search his property with his consent. Nothing. No clothes, no clues, no hidden rooms. He even shows them his diary. There's not a single word about Lara in it. The second suspect is more surprising. An art teacher at Lara's school. Mr. Holloway, 33 years old, new to the area. A man with a quiet voice and strange hobbies: wood carving, insect specimens, taxidermy. A colleague had reported that he often looked at Lara for too long. He himself says he just found her particularly gifted. 3 days after the interview, Holloway suddenly moves away, without giving any reason, without giving notice, without forwarding his mailing address. The police track him to Kentucky and find him in a small guest house. He says he was afraid of being wrongly suspected. There is no alibi for the afternoon of his disappearance, but there is also no evidence. The third name comes from the neighborhood, a father who was often at the playground of it, though his own child never played there. James Whitaker, 40 years old, unemployed, divorced, lives with his sister. Some mothers had said he was strange. He asked children their names. He asked when they had to go home. The police confront him. Whitaker denies everything. He says he was just stretching his legs. There were no charges against him, no pictures, no concrete statements. Again, nothing. 3 names, 3 men, 3 directions. But everything remains vague. Nothing that would warrant a search warrant. Nothing that would warrant an arrest. Nothing that would bring Lara back. But then something strange happens. A man calls the police anonymously. No voice, just a recording. You can hear a girl singing. It sounds like a children's song. Then a man's voice, indistinct, quiet, almost whispering. "She's still here. You're looking in the wrong place." The police take the recording seriously. They try to determine its origin, without success. No clear signal, no trace. The trail leads nowhere, but the officers are getting nervous. Was it a bad joke or a clue? And if it was a clue, why now? The village starts talking. Everyone suspects everyone else. Families are no longer friends. Parents no longer pick up their children from the bus, but drive them straight to the school door. The place that was always quiet becomes louder, not with words, but with fear. And Lara remains missing. 3 months after Lara's disappearance, the police officially withdraw. The filing cabinets are closed, the press conferences discontinued. The case is not considered closed, but dormant. A term that means nothing more than, we have nothing left. For the family, it's like a second loss. It's not just the child who is missing. Now the search is missing too, the movement, the hope Lara's mother says in an interview that she has never felt so much like she is talking to a brick wall. And this wall not only doesn't listen, it doesn't move either. The child's room remains as it was. The books on the shelf, the unmade bed, the note on the door saying, "Please do not disturb." Everything stays the same, as if Lara could return at any moment. But the world keeps turning. The reporters leave, the neighbors go to work, school starts again, and Lara's name is mentioned less and less, first on the streets, then in the newspapers. Then, even in family conversations, only one person remains on the case. Detective Lou Frazier, a man in his late 50s, close to retirement, gray beard, calm gaze, thick leather briefcase. From the beginning, he had the feeling that this case was different, that something deeper was hidden here. Frazier begins to work on his own, unofficially, after work, on weekends. He goes through old files, compares statements, talks to the parents, writes down everything that doesn't fit. He creates a timeline, a map, a list of everyone who ever had anything to do with Lara. His colleagues call it obsession. He calls it necessary. He discovers small inconsistencies. For example, the statement by the boy who claims to have seen a white delivery van. Why was he out alone that day? Or the reference to Whitaker, the visitor to the playground. Why didn't anyone take a photo of him, even though some of the mothers had cell phones with them? And why did the art teacher move away so suddenly? Frazier has no evidence, but he has a feeling, and that feeling tells him that Lara was not taken by chance. It was planned, well thought out, and the perpetrator knew her. But he's getting nowhere. All he finds are pieces of a puzzle with no picture. He sends a report to the district attorney's office, but they refuse to investigate further. No new evidence. No budget, no public interest, so Frazier puts the file back on the shelf. Not because he's giving up, but because he knows he has to wait. For something. For someone. For the moment, when the fog lifts again. Because one thing is clear to him. Whoever took Lara didn't just vanish into thin air. And whoever does something like that doesn't do it just once. He's right. But it will take many years for anyone to understand that. Years pass. The world changes. New presidents, new wars, new scandals. But Lara remains missing. It's as if she's fading between the lines of time. In the year 2012, a new sheriff is elected in Millersburg. A new generation, new methods, more technology. People talk about digitization, modern forensics, hope, but Lara's file remains in a cardboard box, right at the bottom in the archives of the authorities. Dust covers the corners, and no one asks about it anymore. Lara's mother now lives in Nashville. She's working again, but she rarely smiles. In interviews, she says little more than one sentence. "I just want to know where she is." Her father never left town. He drinks. Every Friday, he goes to the edge of the forest where Lara was last seen. Sometimes he sits there for hours, talking to no one, only to himself. And maybe to her. Her friend from back then, Emily, is now 20. She has been silent for a long time. But one day, she gives an interview. Not on television, but for a small true crime podcast that revisits old missing persons cases. There she says something that makes people sit up and take notice. "I don't believe anymore that it was spontaneous. It felt like someone knew exactly when we were going to be there." The host probes further. Emily says that she felt like she was being watched once before Lara disappeared 2 weeks earlier. She thought it was her imagination. A dark car parked on the same street. Again and again, almost at the same time. She hadn't mentioned it at the time. The podcast doesn't get much attention, no millions of views, but one of the few listeners is a young journalist who is working on a story about unsolved cases in rural areas. She gets in touch. And suddenly, after 10 years of silence, Lara's mother's phone rings. Once again, someone is asking about her daughter. Shortly afterwards, the same journalist calls Detective Lou Frazier. He has long since retired. But when she mentions Lara's name, he is immediately back. Alert, attentive, ready. They exchange emails. Frazier opens his old leather briefcase and sees things with new eyes. Because what Emily has said doesn't match what was in the file back then. The police never asked about suspicious vehicles on the road. They only searched the woods. But what if Lara didn't disappear in the woods at all, but was lured there? Suddenly, everything feels alive again. And somewhere, just a few hours away, another story begins to unfold at this very moment. A building ruin, a remote property, and a man with a key to a place no one has entered in years. September 2023. Millerburg has become quieter. Many of the old houses stand empty. People are moving away, and new ones rarely come. Near the center of town is a piece of land that hasn't been used for years. A former vacation home, wood paneling, a porch, a low-lying earth cellar with a concrete floor. The building once belonged to a man named Edward Hollowayan, uncle of the art teacher at Lara's school at the time. The house has been owned by the county for years. Neglected, forgotten, not even officially registered for demolition or renovation, until a small construction company is hired to inspect the basement for mold, structural problems, possible use as storage space. On September 14, 2023, a construction worker drills through an old concrete slab at the back of the earth cellar with a jackhammer. Beneath it, damp earth, irregularly compacted. He takes photos and calls the site manager. As they dig, they come across plastic sheeting. Beneath it, a bundle no bigger than a child. The police are called. Cordoning off, spotlights, forensic evidence. The find is clear. Human remains. Small, wrapped in several layers of plastic and blankets. Next to it, a stuffed animal, light brown, worn, one eye missing, and a small, pale wooden frame with a child's drawing, a rainbow. The remains are taken to the state forensic laboratory. The investigators proceed cautiously. DNA samples, dental records, age analysis, everything takes days, weeks. There are no papers, no clear identification, only a vague feeling. A suspicion that casts a shadow over the entire town. In Millersburg, people speak quietly, but everyone is thinking the same thing. What if it really is Lara? On October 9, confirmation arrives. The police call Lara's mother. The DNA matches. The remains belong to Lara C, missing since November 2002. The investigator's voice on the phone is calm, almost mechanical. The mother later says she couldn't hear a sound, only the rushing of her own blood in her ears. Lara's body wasn't buried. It was hidden. In an artificially created space, sealed with concrete. The basement had an additional wall, apparently only load-bearing, that had separated a 2-square-meter area. Inside were scraps of carpet, wooden toys, and remnants of wallpaper. Children's wallpaper. Motifs, stars, animals, balloons. Forensic investigators also determined that the body had not been placed there immediately after the abduction. There were indications of prolonged storage, bone injuries that were weeks or months old. No clear trauma, no stab or gunshot wounds. The cause of death remains unclear. But one thing is certain. Lara was held captive for a long period of time, and at some point she died, wrapped up, put away, and forgotten. The news hits like a bolt from the blue. In the media, in the town, among the people who remember 2002, and among those who thought Lara was lost forever. But now that she has been found, the real questions begin. Who was in that basement? Who brought Lara there? And was she really alone? The discovery attracts national attention. News channels broadcast special reports. Talk shows invite criminologists. The photo of Lara, taken shortly before her disappearance, is suddenly everywhere again. 9 years old, smiling, with pigtails, as if time had stood still. The coroner releases initial details. The skeleton is complete, with the exception of several small bones. 2 finger bones are missing, presumably due to decomposition. Some of her clothing has been preserved, a dress with suns printed on it, a hairband. Neither matches any known description of Lara's possessions. It looks strange, as if from a second-hand store, or deliberately chosen, perhaps to make her look new, or because she never brought any of her own clothes with her. The cause of death remains unclear for the time being. There are no signs of violence, no blunt trauma, no fractures. But the condition of the bones indicates malnutrition. Lara was undernourished. Her teeth show signs of neglect, and the growth plates indicate that she did not die immediately. The experts are certain. Lara lived for several weeks after her abduction, perhaps even months. And something else stands out. The room in the basement was not makeshift. It had been prepared, lined with wooden panels, small curtains in front of a single slit of light, a lamp on the ceiling. Children's wallpaper, as you would expect in a baby's room, but old, faded, as if it had been there for years. Part of the room seems almost homely, but there is no heating, no toilet, no water, just a mattress, a blanket, a stool, and in the corner, an empty cage, about the size of a rabbit hutch. Empty, clean, disturbing. The police reconstruct the scene. The room was furnished sometime between 1999 and 2002, perhaps even specifically for Lara, or earlier, for someone else. A small discovery catches the investigators' attention. Between the floorboards lies a broken fingernail, with red glitter nail polish. The mother confirms that Lara never wore nail polish. She wasn't allowed to. So who did it belong to? Forensic analysis reveals that the DNA material does not match Lara's, but a check of the databases yields no matches. This confirms that at least one other person was in this room, probably another child. The police initially withhold this fact as a matter of investigative tactics, but internally, alarm bells are ringing. This was not a random perpetrator who was overwhelmed. This was someone who planned it, who prepared for it, who wanted to come back, and so a whole new line of inquiry begins. No longer just, who killed Lara? But, who was she to him? And how many others were there? The basement where Lara was found officially belonged to the county, but that wasn't always the case. The property was transferred in 2015 because the previous owner, Deden, elderly man named Albert Holloway, a retired teacher, widowed, no criminal record. Albert was not a suspect in the original case. He was 70 years old at the time, considered quiet, educated, friendly. He was known for giving candy to children when they went shopping with their parents. No one had ever talked about him. And yet, he owned the very house where Lara disappeared. The police dig deeper. Albert Holloway was the uncle of Mr. Holloway, the art teacher, who suddenly disappeared in 2002. He had left the guest house to his nephew. It was never checked. No search warrant, no concrete suspicion. They had only had their eyes on the teacher, never the family. An investigator searches the estate archives for clues. What he finds is inconspicuous but disturbing. Construction sketches for a basement renovation from 2001. No official building documents, just hand-drawn plans. On them, a square room, insulated, with ventilation, hidden behind a concrete slab. The drawings bear the initials AHH. Then someone comes forward whom no one knew existed. Hannah Holloway, Albert's daughter. Now in her mid-40s, she lives in Virginia and has no contact with her family. But after hearing the news, she calls the police herself. She says that as a child, she was not allowed to enter a room. It was always locked. Her father said it was dangerous, that tools, chemicals, and sharp objects were stored there. She believed him, but once she saw through a crack in the door a small bed, children's wallpaper, and a lamp that was always on. She says she suppressed the memory later. Her father was strict, but never violent. But when she turned 18, she moved away and never spoke of it again. Until now. The police confront her with the sketches. She recognizes the handwriting. It's her father's. This proves that the room was built on purpose, and long before Lara's disappearance. The investigators order a thorough search of the property. Among old furniture and yellowed newspapers, they find a wooden chest. Inside, children's books, doll clothes, and a videotape. They take the tape and send it to the lab, and wait. They don't yet know what they will see on it. But one investigator later says, "From that moment on, we knew we weren't dealing with a kidnapper, but with a collector." The videotape is played in a special lab, digitized and backed up. The tape is damaged, but most of it is still readable. The quality is poor, the image flickers, the sound is noisy. But what you see is clear. A child is sitting on a wooden chair. She is wearing a white dress with a blue bow. Her hair is tied back in 2 braids. She looks thin but alert. Her eyes stare directly into the camera. Then she begins to sing. A children's song. Quietly, hesitantly. "Twinkle, twinkle, little star." She is interrupted briefly. A man's voice from the background says, "A little louder, Lara." Then she continues singing. The recording lasts just under 4 minutes. Then, a still image. Black. The investigators freeze the screen, zoom in on the face, compare it with photos of Lara. There is no doubt. It is her. And the video is dated February 12, 2003. 3 months after her disappearance. That means Lara was still alive, long after the day everyone thought she was dead. But something else is striking. The voice in the background. Calm, clear, no accent. Voice analysis reveals that it does not belong to Albert Holloway. It is too young, too smooth, and it sounds practiced. The police have the audio track analyzed by experts. They compare it with old interviews, interrogations, and recordings. It takes weeks. Then they find a match. The voice belongs to the former art teacher, Mr. Holloway, Albert's nephew, the man who fled Millersburg back then, the man who was never properly questioned. He now lives in North Carolina. New name, new life. Teaching again, this time at a private art school for teenagers. No one there knows anything about his past. The police issue an arrest warrant. In early December 2023, he is arrested. In his house, investigators find a collection of sketches. Girls in children's clothes, always in the same style, many with braids, some with masks, and a drawing that looks like the room in the basement. He is led away in handcuffs, in front of rolling cameras. He says only one sentence: "I never hurt her." But no one believes him, because whatever happened, there was planned. It was documented. And it wasn't the first time. Mr. Holloway's interrogation lasts over 6 hours. He speaks little, often says he can't remember, or, "That was a long time ago." But when he is shown the video, he falls silent. Then he says, "That wasn't my idea." The investigators ask whose idea it was. He remains silent, but after 2 days, he begins to talk. Not voluntarily, but because he realizes there is no way out. He admits to having known Lara. She was quiet, easy to lead. He says he was just curious at first. Then his uncle Albert Holloway told him about the basement, about a room that nobody knows about. He claims Lara was never beaten. She had everything, but the autopsy tells a different story. Signs of malnutrition, weakness, dehydration, no medical care, no freedom. The investigators ask him about the second voice, the glitter nail, the name Chloe, found on a piece of clothing. Holloway says he knows nothing about it, but there is an entry in his notebook. Chloe, 1990, 8, too small, was too loud, left quickly. The police dig deeper. They search missing persons registries, compare data. And sure enough, in 1998, a girl named Chloe Ann White was reported missing. 4 years old, last seen in Sweetwater, about 70 miles away. At the time, the case was suspected to be a child abduction by a parent. The mother was in treatment, the father had disappeared. But now it seems clear. Chloe was never abducted, at least not by her parents. A DNA match with the nail from the basement reveals that it is Chloe. Her DNA was stored in 2018 during a family genetic test of a distant relative, purely by chance, and now it matches. This makes it clear Lara was not the first child. Chloe came first, and she was probably not the last either. Mr. Holloway denies killing Chloe. He says she disappeared while he was at his uncle's house. He claims he never saw her again after that. The investigators doubt this. But without a body, there is no evidence. Only the dress, only the name, only a nail. The investigation now focuses on the property, the house, and the surrounding area. Several gardens in the vicinity are dug up. Sniffer dogs are brought in, but no other bodies are found. Nevertheless, the police are certain. Holloway was not alone. He was part of a pattern, a henchman. And Albert Holloway, long dead, was more than just a silent observer. He was the architect. And perhaps there is someone else who has never been mentioned. Someone who held the camera, or set up the lighting, or chose the first child, because this system had a beginning. And still, no one knows how it will end. During a renewed search of the basement, an officer notices something unusual. The north wall, directly opposite the hidden room, appears thicker than it is marked on the building plan. A cavity test confirms the suspicion. A wall was added at some point. It serves no purpose. It is hiding something. Heavy tools are used to open the wall. Behind it, a small room, barely larger than a shower cubicle. No windows, no light, just a metal box. Inside, a rolled-up piece of clothing, pink with glittery dots. Sewn into the label, the name Chloe. The dress is old, washed out, but intact. Next to it lies a small wooden doll, hand-carved, carved into its stomach. An X and a date. 27 November 02. The investigators hold their breath. It is the day Chloe was reported missing, and there is something else lying there. A spoon, children's cutlery, notched with teeth, as if someone had bitten it repeatedly. And under the fabric, barely visible, a yellowed photo, blurred, but recognizable. A child sitting on a carpet with a board full of colorful building blocks. The face is blurred, but the photo has a name on the back. Lydia. No investigator knows this name. They search databases, old missing persons cases, and find nothing. No case named Lydia. No missing child in the region with that first name. No report. Nothing. The theory changes. Maybe there were never only known victims. Perhaps there were children whom no one missed, because they had no family, because no one asked about them, or because the people who should have been looking for them were themselves part of it all. The discovery of the second room makes headlines. The case is reported again. The term basement of shadows appears in the press. Some talk of a serial hideout. Others call it a pedophile ring, but nothing is confirmed. There is no organization, no network, no evidence. Only rooms, only clothes, only names. And the big question, who is Lydia? Detective Lou Frazier, now officially out of retirement, comes up with a new theory. He believes that there were not only perpetrators, but also accomplices. People who knew something was going on there, who kept quiet, looked away, or profited from it themselves. And if there is a third room, maybe there is also a fourth, or a second house, a second property, a second place that looks exactly the same, only more locked up, because a man like Albert Holloway doesn't plan for a year. He plans for decades, and Lara wasn't the end. She was just the beginning of the end. The investigation is reaching its climax. Over 30 officers are now working on the case. The Lara C file is no longer just one case among many. It has become a symbol of systemic failure, of overlooked clues, of the silence of an entire town. The statements made by Mr. Holloway, the art teacher, lead investigators to further names. Among them is a former colleague of his uncle Albert, a man named Benjamin R., now 63 years old. At the time, he lived in a trailer 15 minutes away from the Holloway house. Today, he lives a secluded life in a nursing home. When questioned, he appears confused but not senile. The officers confront him with the photo of the doll, the name Lydia, and the videotape. He barely responds. But when they show him the picture of Lara, he says quietly, "That was the girl with the quiet eyes." Then, he falls silent again. A search of his home yields new evidence. In an old toolbox, they find notes handwritten, names, dates, places. Lydia 19, 9063 days. Lara, 14th of November, 02, better than expected. The notes are old, the paper is yellowed. They are not lists, they are personal notes. Memories, almost like trophies. In the garage is a second unopened box. Inside is an old camcorder with a tape in the drive. The video has never been made public. But the investigators talk about it later. It shows Lara in the same room as on the first tape, only older, emaciated, quiet. She no longer looks at the camera. She no longer speaks. It is the last sign of life. According to forensic estimates, the recording was made in April 2003, 5 months after her abduction. 2 months before her death, according to the coroner's later estimate. There is no certainty about the exact cause of death, but the evidence is mounting. Lara was neglected, isolated, and sedated. There were traces of a herbal sedative in her bone remains, presumably administered over a long period of time. Albert Holloway is already dead at this point. Benjamin R. is charged with several counts: aiding and abetting deprivation of liberty, murder by omission, and participation in a criminal network. Mr. Holloway is charged on all counts. His trial begins in February 2024. The charges include deprivation of liberty resulting in death, child abuse, and tampering with evidence. The jury takes only 4 hours to reach a verdict. Guilty. He is sentenced to life imprisonment without the possibility of parole. Benjamin R. dies 2 weeks before his trial of a heart attack. This leaves many questions unanswered. Lydia remains missing. Her identity is unknown, and whether there are other children, no one knows. But one thing is certain. Lara was not a coincidence. She was part of a plan, a structure, a disturbed world that only functioned because no one looked too closely. And perhaps this is the thought that hurts the most. Perhaps she could have been saved if someone had listened earlier, if the right questions had been asked, if the forest had not been underestimated. After Mr. Holloway's conviction, Millersburg breathes a sigh of relief for the first time in 2 decades. But it is not a liberating sigh of relief. Rather, it is a quiet, cautious letting go. Because even though the case seems to be solved, a remnant of darkness remains in the houses, in the thoughts, in the years that have been lost. Lara's mother does not attend the trial. She follows it on a small monitor in an adjoining room. Later, she says she couldn't hear the man's voice without seeing her daughter's face in front of her. She decides to have Lara's remains buried in the family grave. A small ceremony, only close friends, no media. There is no date of death on the gravestone, only her name. And underneath, gone too soon, loved forever. The town erects a memorial, a simple stone at the edge of the forest where Lara was last seen. Next to it, a wooden bench, and a small bronze figura girl with braids, sitting with her knees pulled up to her chest. In the weeks that follow, many people come forward, parents, teachers, former neighbors. They give interviews, write letters, talk about guilt, about what could have been noticed, or should have been said, or should not have been ignored. Detective Lou Frazier receives another award. He declines an official medal, but gives an interview. In it, he says, "I never knew Lara, but I understood her better than many people who were close to her, and I wish I had done that sooner." Then, he retires, this time for good. The journalist who covered the case for years publishes a book titled Wooden Rooms. It becomes a bestseller, not because of the crime, but because of the subtle details. The voices that were not heard, the doors that were never opened. And yet, one last sentence remains that no one can forget. In the basement, behind the second room, there was a wooden wall. On the back, almost overlooked, carved with a nail, barely visible, were the words, "There is another one." To this day, no one knows who wrote it, or when. The handwriting could never be identified. And with that sentence, the Lara C case ends officially closed, but still open for many, because in cases like these, it's not just about justice. It's about looking, even when it's almost too late. If you enjoyed watching this video, please hit the like button and subscribe to my channel. It only takes 5 seconds, and it would help me a lot on my journey. See you.